Welcome to Proverbs 31 by Design. My name is Tina Heisman. I help Christian women who are struggling with the overwhelm of trying to balance being a wife, mother, and career woman. When they work with me, they discover how to create their own unique level of balance so they can finally experience the joy, passion, success, and fulfillment they have been seeking in life. So the topic of today's podcast is 6 steps to stop worrying. But before we get started, I have something for you. It's my ultimate guide to guilt-free self-care. You can download it for free on my website, tinaheisman.com. I would also like to invite you to my private Proverbs 31 community on Facebook, where you can come to get positive inspiration for your life. Search Proverbs 31 by Design in the Facebook search bar. Okay, so let's dive in. 6 steps to stop worrying. I swear, you guys, literally, as I was writing this script for this podcast, I got news of something from the kids' school, and that caused me to worry. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, girl, follow your own advice. So that is what we're talking about today. And I'm wondering if you are like me, like, do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and you're worrying about something and your mind starts churning, and maybe it's, something to do with your job or your work or your health or something with one of your children or your marriage or maybe finances. And your mind just kind of keeps going and it's thinking about all of the different scenarios and things that could go wrong. And when that happens to me in the middle of the night, it's really hard to fall back asleep. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that, but guess what? Nighttime is not the only time I worry. I like to call myself a recovering professional worrier. My parents used to call me a worrier a lot when I was younger. So the thing is, worrying is goofy because if you think about it, it really doesn't do anything for us. But somehow we hang on to it like it's going to help us or something. Like it's going to make us feel better when really it makes us feel terrible. The truth about worry is that it's a waste of time. I mean, we tend to worry about things that happened in the past or that are you're thinking that could happen in the future, right? And so we're not usually worried about what's happening at this exact moment in time. It's not very often that happens. And I just want you to think about that, right? Because for the most part, probably everything is fine in this moment most of the time. But if we're worrying about the past, then that's pointless because we can't change it. We know that. And if we're worrying about something that's going to happen in the future, that's also pretty pointless because it doesn't help us fix anything in advance, right? Now, we know this, but it just seems so hard to control our minds to make the worry stop. But the ironic thing is, our mind is the only thing that we have control over in this world. Right? We can never control other people. We talk about that on this podcast. We can't make them behave how we want them to behave. And as far as our circumstances go, we can't always control them. Like sometimes you can change your circumstances. Like say you live in an apartment and you have really loud neighbors, like you could move when your lease was up. But what if you're locked into your lease for a year and you can't move, like, right? You can't change that circumstance. So then how do you deal with the worry and stress that's coming from the situation? And so we're working on controlling our minds is what we need to focus on if we want to feel better and stop worrying. The funny thing is, so many of us think that our thoughts are automatic. I can't tell you like how many times I've thought it or other people, like they think I can't help it. Like I can't help but think about that. I can't help but worry about that. But the truth is you can. I promise you can. This is something that takes a lot of practice, but here's a truth that I want to share with you. Every thought is optional. I'm going to repeat that just in case you missed it. Every thought is optional. And this is a really big deal because here is the way the world works. I hope you guys have pen and paper here because write this down. Your thoughts create your feelings, and your feelings are what cause you to take action. And so the action we might be talking about today might be worrying, right? You have a thought, and that creates a feeling, and that creates an action. And so positive thoughts are going to give us positive feelings, and those will result in positive actions that we take. But if we're having worried thoughts, then we're going to have worried feelings, and then our results are going to be pretty negative and worrisome, right? So nothing good is happening here. So I hope that you are convinced. I hope that I've done enough to convince you that it is worthwhile to try to stop worrying. It's a total waste of time. And so that's what we're going to spend the rest of the podcast talking about, and that's the how. Because you know me, I like to give you practical tips. So today I'm going to take you through 6 steps to stop worrying. Now, before we dive in, you're going to notice that I tell you to write things down in each step, and this is very purposeful. If you really want to stop worrying, you have to get out of your head. And the best way to get out of your head is to get it on paper. So have your pen and paper ready for your worry sessions. Okay, step 1. Step 1 is to identify the thought that is causing you to worry. So when you feel yourself in that worried state, when you notice that you're feeling worried, ask yourself, what is causing me to feel worried? And then write down everything that comes to your mind. Once you do that, I want you to ask yourself, it's like a section B on the step 1. And that I want you to ask yourself this question. How are these thoughts serving me right now? This is a really good point to ponder because most likely you are not going to come up with a positive reason for how these thoughts are serving you. Because remember, worry is a waste of time. So that was step 1. Identify what's causing you worry and write it down so you can see it with your eyes. And then ask yourself, how are these thoughts serving me? Now, step 2. Step 2 is to write down all of the bad things that could happen if this worry becomes a reality, right? So think about what are the negative things that will happen if this worry becomes a reality. And you might want to go as far as to think about the worst case scenario, the worst thing that could happen if this worry becomes a reality. And that might sound like a scary thing, but actually it's the opposite of that. Because when we think about the negative things that could happen and write them down, we get clear on what we're really thinking that might be just below the surface that you're not realizing. And it will help you see what you're really afraid of. And it's really important because most of the time, and I think you will agree with this, you've probably experienced this, that most of the time, what we're worrying about doesn't come true. And if it does happen to come true, it's usually not nearly as bad as we think. Our minds are crazy and they dream up just some crazy stuff, right, that causes us so much stress. It's needless. So take a look at it so that you can generate some peace from it and seeing with your eyes. Okay, so these are the things I'm afraid of, right? Okay, so that was step 2. Now, step 3 is to ask yourself, what do I know for sure? What are the facts about this situation? And then write down any actual facts that you know about the current situation. So this is something to be careful of. Don't write more worry here or any opinions. A fact is something that everyone would agree on, right? If you presented the facts of the situation to everyone, they would all say, yes, those are true. We can all verify that those are true. So there would be no opinions or other worry here, okay? So this is showing you in your mind, what is real, and that helps you sort it out from what's being imagined in your mind, okay? And so the next step, step 4, is to ask yourself, what would I like to feel instead of worry? So did you catch that? Ask yourself, what would I like to feel instead of worry? Have you ever thought about that? So make a list of some different feelings that you would like to have instead of worry. Is it peace about the situation, or contentment, or excitement even? whatever's going on, pick the feeling that you like best, right? And then here's sort of a little B, like a step B in this step 4 here. Then make a list of the thoughts that are going to help you feel that way about this situation. So if you decide that you want to feel excited about this situation instead of worried, what would you have to think in order to feel excited? And so pick the thought that just resonates with you the most. And the purpose of this is so that you can have a replacement thought. So when the worried thought comes to your mind, then you can replace it with the new thought that's going to make you feel excited instead of worried. So I have a little example here. If you're worried about the new school year starting, which I think a lot of us mamas are right now, right? And so maybe you're worried about like how your child will do this year. Take some time to think about how you would like to feel about this. Like, do you really want to feel worried about it? No, I don't really want to feel worried about it. Wouldn't you rather feel excited about your child's opportunities this year? Or maybe just peaceful, knowing that your child is in the right place, that your child's in a great school, or that your child will be surrounded by their friends, right? So just think about how powerful that is. If you can get yourself to that kind of a state of positivity that's not based on fluff or fake things. It's like these are real things, right? Real, actual facts. And so this will help you feel the way you want to feel, which might be excited. And think about how that will rub off on your child. When you can get yourself to an excited state, then you can help your child be excited about the school year too. Instead of if we're walking around all worried, and that could rub off on our children and they feel worried instead, right? So this is a really great step to do, and it feels good to think about what would I rather feel than worried. Okay, so step 5 is to ask yourself, what can I control? So we've already talked about this a little bit, right? We know that we cannot control other people and that sometimes we can't control the circumstance, but we can control our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. So in the instance that you might be worrying about, write down the things that you think you have control over. Make sure you remind yourself that you're in control of your thoughts and you're in control of your feelings and you're in control of your actions. And that leads us directly to the final step, step 6. And that is to take an action to help you alleviate the worry. Okay? So once you've identified what you're worried about, you look at like, what's the worst case scenario? What are the facts of the situation? How do I really want to feel? Now we ask ourselves, what can I do to help alleviate that worry? So maybe in the instance of your child going to school, a new school year, maybe if you were feeling uneasy about the teacher or the curriculum or something, that you could arrange a one-on-one meeting with the teacher in the beginning of the year to talk about your concerns, right? So that's just an example. Or maybe you're worried about debt in your finances. So maybe steps that you could take there would be to take some time to actually write out a budget and commit to making small payments toward your debt each month. And that's really going to help you alleviate your worry because now you're doing something proactive, right? And taking action. So whatever worry you have, come up with something that you can do to help alleviate the worry and get you moving in the right direction. It will feel so much better. You're just going to feel like so purposeful and intentional. It's going to feel great. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that part of your action plan might be giving your worries to God, right? Have you tried that before? Like I like to imagine like literally handing up my worries to God and asking him to please help. And we know he wants us to help us with these worries. We know he doesn't want us to be worried. In fact, Matthew 6:34 says, "Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." Right? Like, why are you worrying about what happened yesterday? Why are you worrying about what might happen tomorrow? We have enough trouble in today, right? Let's just worry about today. I love that thought. And I think it brings us to another really good point. I think that we all think that there will be a point where we don't have any problems or any worries, right? Like we feel like if I can just get this problem solved, then I won't have any more problems. But it isn't true. Like, right? Like that's just not life. As we work through our current problems, we will solve them and move on to brand shiny new problems. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it sounds silly, but it actually brings me peace to think about it this way because that's just life, right? Like life is both good and both bad. And so in essence, there will always be something for us to work on. And I think that brings peace when we know like, okay, like this is just part of life. Nothing has gone wrong here. Life is half good and half bad. But the thing is, we get to choose when we feel worry and see problems. Are we going to let that drag us down and drain our energy and make us crabby and make us not present in our moments and living our lives? Or are we going to take positive action and do something about it that will help us feel better and more energetic and more purposeful and intentional so that we can move on, right? On to the next problem. So that's what we want to do, just moving on up, right? So I hope this has been helpful for you, these 6 steps. And I totally know this is easier said than done. Promise you. I like literally told you when I was writing this, a worry like literally came to me and I had to put it to work. And so I'm here for you. I would love to work with you. If you would like to know more about how I can help you stop worrying, reach out to me for a complimentary discovery call. I would love to guide you. Also, don't forget to join the Proverbs 31 by Design community on Facebook for positive inspiration. And hey, if you love this podcast, would you be willing to go over to iTunes and rate it for me? That would mean so much to me. Okay, girls, thank you, and I will see you next week.